You may feel it as a quiet knowing rather than a piece of information, not a message arriving, not a sound being heard, but a subtle awareness that your name is present somewhere beyond you. The angels say they are talking about you right now, but not in the way the mind usually imagines. This is not gossip, judgment, or urgency. It is recognition settling into awareness. When recognition happens, it does not rush. It does not demand response. It moves softly, like a thought that lingers because it has meaning. The angels explain that recognition travels differently than curiosity or desire. It moves inward before it ever moves outward. That is why you sense it calmly, without tension. People often speak about others when something unresolved is still integrating. Not unresolved in the sense of unfinished action, but unresolved in understanding. A presence can pass through someone's life and leave a mark that takes time to interpret. When that interpretation begins, your name may surface naturally, not as a plan, but as a reference point. This is important to understand clearly. When your name comes up, it does not mean someone wants something from you. It does not mean they are preparing to reach out. The angels say people talk when they are processing meaning, not when they are certain. Speech becomes a tool for clarity, not a signal of intent. What you embodied mattered. That is the only reason recognition remains active. You may have represented steadiness, honesty, restraint, or presence in a way that challenged familiar patterns. When someone encounters a version of connection that does not fit what they expected, the experience often takes time to land. Distance creates the space where that landing can finally occur. This recognition does not feel loud because it is not charged with emotion. It does not pull at you or create urgency. It feels observational, almost neutral. That neutrality is the sign that this awareness is not meant to entangle you. It is simply acknowledging impact. The angels say impact leaves echoes even when intention is gone. A person does not have to be actively thinking about you for your influence to be present in their reflections. Influence follows imprint, not attention. If something shifted inside them because of you, their system returns to that reference point when trying to understand itself. You may notice that this awareness arises when you are grounded, not when you are searching. That is because you are no longer seeking validation. When attachment softens, perception sharpens. The angels say awareness becomes clearer when the need to be seen dissolves. This is not information meant to draw you outward. It is meant to confirm something inward. You made an impact without needing to manage it. You were seen without needing to perform. Recognition does not require your participation to be complete. At this stage, the most important thing is where you place this awareness. If you hold it lightly, it stays calm. If you turn it into a story, it becomes heavy. The angels remind you that recognition does not become more meaningful when it is analyzed. It becomes complete when it is acknowledged and released. You are not being asked to listen in, wait, or adjust yourself. This is not a cue for action. It is simply information passing through. Information that says your presence mattered in a way that is still being understood. And that is enough. This first phase is about letting recognition exist without turning it into obligation. When recognition is allowed to be just recognition, it finishes its work quietly. The angels say when your name comes up in awareness, your role has already been fulfilled. As recognition continues to move through them, the way your name is spoken changes. It is not animated by desire or regret. It is quieter than that. The angels say this is the stage where people are not trying to decide what to do, but trying to understand what happened inside them. Your presence becomes a reference, not a direction. Distance plays an important role here. While you were close, emotions and reactions may have been too immediate to interpret. Space removes urgency. And when urgency fades, meaning can finally surface. This is why acknowledgment often arrives later rather than sooner. People do not always recognize impact in real time. They recognize it when they are no longer inside it. When your name comes up now, It is often attached to reflection rather than longing. You may be mentioned as part of a conversation about growth, change, or realization, not because you are being reconsidered, but because you represented something that shifted their internal landscape. The angels say people talk about what clarified them, not only about what they want back. This kind of discussion is not forward-moving in the way the mind expects. It does not lead toward action. It leads toward integration. Integration is the process of absorbing an experience until it no longer needs to be revisited. Talking is one way the mind organizes understanding before letting something settle. It is important not to confuse this with indecision. Indecision is restless. Integration is measured. The tone of this recognition is steady, not agitated. That steadiness is why you do not feel pulled toward it. There is no energetic hook, only awareness passing through. The angels emphasize that these conversations are rarely about you as a person. They are about what you represented, a boundary they had not seen before, a calm they were unfamiliar with, a form of presence that did not demand or collapse. When something disrupts an old internal pattern, the mind returns to it later to understand how and why. This is also why these discussions do not require your involvement. The work is internal to them. Your participation would not add clarity. In fact, it could interrupt the process. Recognition completes itself most cleanly when it is allowed to remain reflective rather than interactive. You may notice that as this awareness settles, your curiosity decreases rather than increases. You do not feel the urge to know details. You do not need confirmation. The angels say this is because your system recognizes that this information does not belong to you to act upon. It belongs to you only to understand your own impact. Understanding impact without attaching identity to it is an important emotional skill. You can acknowledge that you mattered without making that meaning carry responsibility. You can be referenced without being required. This distinction keeps you centered. At this stage, recognition begins to lose its intensity, not because it disappears, but because it has served its purpose. Once meaning is named, it no longer needs repetition. Once awareness is reached, the mind moves on. The angels remind you that not every acknowledgement is meant to reconnect people. Some acknowledgements exist to release people, to allow someone to say, even silently, "That mattered, and now I understand why." This is why the energy around this feels clean. There is no unfinished pull, no emotional residue reaching for resolution, just a quiet understanding finding its place. For you, the role here is simple. Stay centered. Let recognition pass without interpretation. Let understanding complete itself where it began. When recognition is allowed to remain recognition, it does not turn into attachment. It resolves into clarity. And clarity does not ask you to do anything at all. As this recognition finishes its movement, something subtle shifts on your side as well, not outwardly, not dramatically, but inwardly. The weight of wondering loosens. The angels say this is the moment when awareness completes its cycle. When meaning no longer needs attention, it releases itself naturally. You may notice that thoughts about being discussed do not linger the way they once might have. There is no spike of curiosity, no urge to imagine scenarios, no need to place yourself inside conversations you cannot hear. This is not because recognition stopped. It is because it no longer needs you. When awareness matures, it becomes quiet. Loud recognition seeks response. Mature recognition seeks resolution. The angels say what is happening now is resolution without contact, understanding without explanation, and closure without conversation. This is where many people become confused, because the mind is trained to associate recognition with obligation. But recognition does not automatically create responsibility. Someone else processing your impact does not assign you a role. It simply confirms that your presence carried meaning beyond the moment. You are not required to hold space for that process. You are not asked to wait, wonder, or adjust your life around it. In fact, the angels say the most respectful thing you can do is continue living fully, without reference to how or where your name appears. This is what healthy separation looks like. Not emotional distance, but emotional sovereignty. You are aware without being involved. You are acknowledged without being pulled. You remain centered while others complete their own understanding. As recognition dissolves into clarity, something else becomes visible. Your confidence does not come from being remembered. It comes from knowing you are real while you are present. That is the kind of impact that does not need repetition. The angels remind you that not every meaningful interaction is meant to continue. Some exist to reveal something, to shift a pattern, or to show what is possible. Once that purpose is fulfilled, the connection does not need to persist in form. Its influence has already done its work. If there is a feeling of peace settling now, that is the sign of completion. Peace does not announce itself. It arrives quietly, once the need to interpret fades. You are not losing anything by letting this go. You are gaining space. Recognition that requires no action is a gift. It confirms your integrity without binding you to outcome. It allows you to stand fully in yourself, without reaching or retreating. The angels say when recognition passes through awareness and exits as clarity, it leaves behind steadiness. Steadiness is the final mark of something that is integrated cleanly. You do not need to check for signs. You do not need to wonder who said what. You do not need to keep this awareness alive. It has already completed its purpose. Let recognition be enough. Let clarity remain. Let your path continue unobstructed. When understanding finishes its work, silence is not emptiness. It is peace,